In the year 2350, the stars had been divided long ago, mapped and claimed by empires, corporations, and alliances. Earth, once the cradle of humanity, had transformed into something unrecognizable, a fragmented, fiercely independent world. No longer the center of the galaxy, it had become a symbol of resilience, a stubborn rock in the endless expanse of space. Its colonies, though few, were vital to its survival, and their defense was entrusted to Earth's most lethal soldiers, the Jungle Special Forces, JSF. Captain Amelia, Ami, Carter stood in the war room, eyes fixed on the holographic map before her. The glow from the digital display reflected off her stern face. The map showed a stretch of Earth's frontier colonies, lush, dense jungles teeming with life, but also strategic outposts and resources vital to humanity's survival. She could feel the tension in the air, even through the cold metallic walls of the command center. Her team, 6 of the best soldiers Earth had to offer, was ready. The Galactic Armies had come, just as the intelligence reports predicted. For them, it was just another world to conquer, another species to enslave. Earth, they believed, was a primitive backwater. And their initial move was a standard one: destroy the colonies, obliterate any resistance, and then proceed to the planet itself. Simple. Efficient. Until the unexpected happened. "We've got company," came the voice of Lieutenant Michael Chin, Ami's second-in-command. He was scanning the incoming data, his fingers moving across the console with rapid precision. "Large fleet, heading straight for Colony 6. Ami narrowed her eyes. "How many?" "Enough to wipe them off the map, ma'am. One of their dreadnoughts is already in orbit. The rest are deploying ground forces. They'll hit the jungle's perimeter within the hour." "They're confident," Ami muttered, her voice low. The Galactic Armies were like that, arrogant in their superiority. They had advanced technology, vast fleets, and powerful weaponry. But they didn't have what Earth had. "You know what to do," she said, standing tall. "This isn't a conventional fight. We fight their arrogance. We fight their ignorance." Her team assembled quickly, each member silent but focused. They had trained for this moment their whole lives, learning to survive in the harshest conditions Earth had to offer. But this mission was different. It was more than survival. It was a test of humanity's place in the galaxy. The Galactic Armies were not used to losing. To them, a colony like this, tucked away in the vast, uncharted jungles, was little more than an inconvenience. To them, Earth was weak. The Galactic Army's arrival. On board the command ship Iridon, General Stack watched Earth's defenses unfold on his display screen. The Zorkon species was a cold-blooded, calculating one, with an eye for conquest. His species had ruled countless worlds for millennia, and their advanced technology and superior tactics had never failed them. Earth, in his estimation, was an obstacle, nothing more. The primitive resistance he had heard about from his scouts was laughable. "Begin the bombardment," Stack ordered, his voice cold, devoid of emotion. "Eradicate the first line of defense." His orders were swiftly obeyed. The fleet moved into position, the massive warships beginning to align for a precision strike. A wave of energy bolts shot down toward the jungle, aimed at the colony's perimeter. Trees exploded in fiery splinters, the dense foliage incinerated under the barrage. Stack watched with detached satisfaction. The humans would be no match for the might of his forces. Their primitive tactics, he believed, would falter. The battle would be over before it had even begun. But there was one thing he failed to account for: the jungle itself. The Jungle Special Forces strike back. Ami's team was already on the move, vanishing into the dense jungle as the first blasts of alien weaponry began to rain down. The forest, once a peaceful refuge, now roared with chaos. But to the JSF, it was home, a place of danger and beauty, a place they had learned to navigate better than anyone else. "Targets in sight," Sergeant Carlos, a massive man with a heart to match his size, whispered into his comm. His eyes scanned the distant smoke rising from the first wave of bombardment. "We've got to move fast. We're not going to win this in a straight-up fight. But we know this land," Ami replied, her voice steady. That's our advantage. They split into smaller units, each assigned a specific task. The goal was clear: harass, delay, and disrupt the invaders until Earth's main defense fleet could arrive. The JSF had no advanced ships, no orbital platforms. What they had were their wits, their strength, and the unforgiving wilderness. Ami crouched low, her eyes flicking between the shadows of the trees as she prepared her next move. She wasn't worried about the bombardment. She had trained in worse. Her soldiers, too, were used to operating in environments far more hostile than what any alien invader could throw at them. Her team was a blur of motion, using camouflage suits to blend seamlessly into the environment. They moved like ghosts, disappearing and reappearing as they laid their traps. A blast here, an ambush there. The galactic forces, advanced though they were, could not track them. The jungle swallowed their movements, and every time the invaders thought they had them cornered, they were gone. The JSF hit hard, using Earth's terrain to their advantage. It wasn't just the jungle, it was the environment itself. The way the vines moved, the sound of the leaves in the wind, the birds that made unsettling calls, and the way the ground shifted beneath their feet. They were attuned to all of it. The invaders were not. Ami felt the pulse of the jungle as she crouched behind a rock, waiting for the right moment. Her breathing slowed, her senses sharpened. The aliens were approaching. Their heavy boots crushed the earth beneath them, but they were unaware of the trap lying in wait. Ami nodded once, and her team sprang into action. Stak's realization. Back on Iridon, Stak's confidence was beginning to waver. His scouts were reporting strange occurrences, blips on their tracking systems that didn't make sense. Movement in places where no movement should be. Malfunctions in his drones. His initial smugness began to crack as the losses mounted. "Report!" he barked, his voice rising in anger. "We've lost contact with the forward units, General," his communications officer replied. "They're being wiped out, one by one. We can't get a fix on their location." Stak's eyes narrowed, his reptilian mind racing. This was impossible. "Impossible," he muttered, disbelief creeping into his tone. But it was happening. His forces were being hunted, outmaneuvered, and outsmarted. The humans' primitive resistance was proving to be more dangerous than he had thought. "Send in the assault walkers," Stak ordered, his voice now a deadly growl. "I want them all dead. Now." But even as the assault walkers prepared to land, Stak had an inkling that things were about to get far worse. The unseen enemy. Ami stood at the edge of a clearing, watching the alien reinforcements march into the trap. Their assault walkers moved like massive predators, but they were blind to the net closing around them. "No," she whispered to herself. With the press of a button, the jungle erupted. Earth's weapons were nothing like the alien artillery, no devastating lasers or bombs, but crude, clever traps designed to slow, disable, and kill. Explosions rang out, cutting down the walkers one by one, the thick undergrowth entangling their legs, sending them crashing into the ground. The Galactic Armies were confused, disoriented, and outmatched. And Ami smiled, knowing the first lesson of warfare against these invaders had already been taught: underestimating Earth would cost them everything. The jungle was alive. It wasn't just the rustling of leaves or the distant calls of birds. The air thrummed with a quiet tension, a promise that something was coming. Ami Carter could feel it. The Galactic Armies had underestimated Earth, misjudged the ferocity of its defenders, and the consequences were unfolding in real time. The first wave of invaders had been a disaster for them. The trap had been set perfectly, alien assault walkers immobilized by the dense underbrush, their massive forms toppling like toys in a child's hands. But now, General Stak was growing desperate, and his desperation would lead to more bloodshed. Ami knew it was only a matter of time before the galactic forces launched a counterattack, one that would be far more organized, more punishing. Her team was already on the move, carving paths through the undergrowth with fluid precision. The sounds of their boots were swallowed by the dense canopy, the thick vines, and the pulsating energy of the jungle. The only signs of their passage were the occasional bent branches or disturbed leaves, a subtle reminder of their presence. Ami glanced over her shoulder at Lieutenant Michaelchin, who was moving swiftly behind her, his expression tight but determined. We've disrupted them, but they'll be back stronger. Stak won't just give up, she said, her voice low and steady. We've got the element of surprise on our side, Chen replied. But we'll need more than ambushes. They've got tech we can't match. We have something better, Ami said with a grim smile. The jungle. The plan was simple, but it had to be executed flawlessly. For the next few hours, they moved deeper into the jungle, setting explosives, sabotaging the aliens' forward positions, and leaving behind nothing but confusion. They were ghosts, striking and disappearing before the invaders could mount a response. The galactic forces, with their advanced equipment and superior numbers, were left in disarray, their morale crumbling with each ambush. Stak's frustration. On board the Iridon, General Stak's face was a mask of fury. His forces had been routed once again, and his patience was wearing thin. The reports were coming in too fast, his soldiers were being picked off in small, tactical engagements, and their advanced technology couldn't seem to keep up with the guerrilla tactics being employed by the humans. Why are we losing to these creatures? Stak growled, his tail lashing behind him. We outnumber them. We outgun them. How can they keep doing this? His communications officer hesitated before responding. They're not fighting like a conventional army, General. They're using the jungle against us. It's like they're part of it. Then we'll burn the jungle, Stak snapped. Let's see how well their tactics work when there's nothing left to hide behind. Begin preparations for orbital bombardment. The officer nodded, but a hint of uncertainty lingered in the air. The Zorkon had always believed in overwhelming force, but this wasn't a conventional battle. This was a fight for survival in a world that refused to be conquered. The guerrilla tactics continue. Back in the jungle, Ami's team was preparing for the next phase. They had set the stage. Now it was time to bring the fight to the heart of the alien invasion. The galactic forces were advancing, moving into position for a major strike, but they had no idea what was waiting for them. Intel reports that their assault drones are nearing the northern ridge, Sergeant Carlos said as he crouched next to Ami, scanning the terrain. They've got a whole battalion of infantry following up. We need to move now. Ami nodded, her mind working through the variables. The galactic forces had begun to deploy heavy infantry, elite soldiers equipped with energy shields and plasma rifles. These weren't the uncoordinated stragglers they had fought before. These were soldiers bred for war, trained in the deadliest combat techniques the galaxy had to offer. The JSF would have to be at their best to handle them. But Ami wasn't worried. She knew the jungle would give them the advantage they needed. The JSF weren't just soldiers, they were survivalists, trained to fight in ways the Galactic Armies could never replicate. Set the diversion, Ami ordered. We'll hit them from the east, once they've committed to the northern pass. The team split into two groups. Chen, Carlos, and a few others would stage the diversion. They would fire on the northern pass, creating a distraction and drawing the aliens into a false engagement. Meanwhile, Ami, along with the rest of the team, would strike at the heart of the alien formation from the rear. It was a simple plan, but it depended on timing and the enemy's overconfidence. The Galactic Army's misstep. The diversion went off without a hitch. The galactic forces, expecting a direct assault, rushed to the northern pass, their weapons primed. The JSF had anticipated this. As the first wave of alien soldiers moved into position, they were met with a barrage of gunfire, synchronized, precise. The galactic infantry had no time to react. Several soldiers fell, their bodies torn apart by the brutal firepower of the JSF. But the real trap was yet to come. As the alien forces poured into the northern pass, Ami's team moved in from behind, their weapons silent, their movements swift. Using the thick undergrowth for cover, they closed the gap between them and the invaders. At the last possible moment, they emerged, striking with lethal precision. Explosives set in the trees triggered a series of blasts, sending the galactic soldiers scrambling for cover. But it was too late. They were already surrounded. Ami moved through the chaos like a shadow, her team following her every command. They didn't need to exchange words. They had trained for years to move as one, their actions seamless. Alien soldiers were gunned down, while others found themselves ensnared in vines, dragged into the thick, unforgiving jungle. The galactic forces were being wiped out, one by one, their attempts to regroup futile. But even as the tide turned in the humans' favor, Ami knew that this would only be a temporary victory. The galactic armies wouldn't let up. They would come back, harder and stronger. Stak's wrath. Back aboard Iridon, Stak slammed his fist onto the command table, his eyes burning with rage. His forces had been decimated, and his patience had finally snapped. Enough of this, he hissed. Deploy the orbital bombardment. Reduce the jungle to ash. Leave nothing behind. If the humans wish to fight like animals, then we shall see how well they do against the fire. He didn't care about the casualties anymore. The jungle was their home turf, but the galactic armies were no strangers to devastation. Stak's pride had been wounded, and it would be healed with the fire of destruction. Ami's forewarning. As the final alien soldiers fell, Ami felt the shift in the air, the unnatural stillness that preceded a storm. Her comms crackled to life. Ami! Chen's voice was tight with urgency. They're preparing something big. We don't have much time. Ami's blood ran cold. She could already feel it, an alien presence in the air, an unfamiliar hum that signaled something terrible. Stak was ready to burn the jungle down. The fight was far from over. She looked at her team, the weight of the moment pressing down on her shoulders. Fall back. We're not done yet. They think they can burn the jungle? Let's show them what that really means. As they retreated deeper into the jungle, the realization set in. This battle would only escalate from here. The galactic armies had made one fatal mistake. They had underestimated humanity. And Ami Carter, standing at the forefront of the fight, was about to make them pay for that mistake in ways they would never expect. The tension was palpable in the jungle. Every breath, every rustling leaf, every snap of a branch seemed to echo through the dense foliage, but none of it was the natural rhythm of Earth's untamed wilderness. This was the unnerving stillness before a storm. Ami Carter and her team had pushed the galactic armies back, but the enemy was no longer to be underestimated. Stak's forces had regrouped, and now they were bringing everything to bear. The air had the unmistakable hum of impending destruction, the sound of the enemy preparing to unleash their most devastating weapon. Orbital bombardment in 5 minutes. Lieutenant Michael Chen's voice crackled in Ami's earpiece. They're not just hitting the northern ridge anymore. They're going for everything. Ami's jaw tightened. She had expected this. After the humiliating losses, Stak had resorted to the only tactic he knew would work: obliterate the jungle, burn it to the ground, and make it impossible for Earth's forces to fight back. But that wouldn't break them. Not as long as they had each other. And not as long as they had the jungle itself. We don't retreat, Ami said, her voice steady. We fight. And we make them regret every step they've taken. Stak's wrath. Far above, in the shadow of Iridon, Stak looked out across the planet's surface with cold satisfaction. His forces had been battered, but now the time had come to end this. His fleet was ready to turn Earth's most powerful weapon, the jungle, into nothing but a smoldering memory. Engage orbital strike, Stak ordered. His voice was the sound of absolute finality. The galactic armies had their weapons of mass destruction, and they were about to use them to erase what was left of the human resistance. The massive orbital cannons, capable of reducing entire landscapes to ash, powered up, their barrels aligned, targeting the heart of Earth's defenses. Stak didn't hesitate. The bombardment began. Brilliant beams of destructive energy seared through the atmosphere, falling upon the jungle like a rain of fire. Trees erupted in violent flames, the land trembling under the force of each strike. The once impenetrable green expanse, so vital to Earth's defenses, was being reduced to cinders. Ami's counterattack. On the ground, Ami stared at the sky as the first blast hit the jungle perimeter. The light was blinding, and the heat was immediate. But the land was not going to yield. It wasn't just the jungle that fought, it was everything Earth had endured. It was the grit of every soldier who had ever stood on this land and refused to bow. Move now! Ami snapped, her voice cutting through the calms. The team had prepared for this moment, for the enemy to lash out with everything they had. Now it was their turn. Ami's team scattered in unison, moving with fluid precision. The bombardment had weakened their position, but the jungle wasn't dead yet. The energy from the strikes had disturbed the ground, making the thick foliage more vulnerable, more unstable, but that wouldn't stop them. It would give them the advantage. Deploy the charges, Ami ordered. They had rigged the jungle for this. Earth's natural resources, combined with their knowledge of the terrain, had created a perfect trap. The Galactic Armies were about to get a taste of their own arrogance. Explosions rocked the Earth as the team triggered their devices, setting off a chain reaction. The remaining trees fell with brutal speed, their roots torn free, crashing down on the alien invaders below. Ami watched as the galactic soldiers tried to react, but the environment was no longer in their favor. The jungle was alive again, and it had teeth. We're taking back this land, Ami muttered to herself as she sprinted toward the clearing. The tide of the battle was shifting. But there was one final task to complete. The last push. With the bombardment still shaking the ground beneath their feet, Ami and her team moved toward the heart of the Galactic Command Center. They knew this was the final stand. If they could take out the alien leadership, the rest of the invading force would crumble. But the path would be treacherous. The Galactic Armies had reinforced their position, sending in their elite soldiers, fully equipped with advanced armor, energy shields, and plasma rifles. The team split into two groups. Chen and Carlos would take the left flank, drawing the majority of the galactic force's attention. Ami, with the rest of her team, would breach the command center and neutralize Stack himself. They moved quickly, each step calculated, each moment a risk. As they approached the command center, the cacophony of explosions, shouts, and blaster fire seemed to blend with the very roar of the jungle itself. It was chaos, but it was their chaos. Stay sharp, Ami ordered as she crouched behind a large boulder, signaling for her team to follow. Once we're inside, we go for the heart. Stack's command ship? The command center loomed ahead, surrounded by thick layers of protective barriers, but Ami had anticipated this. She signaled to her team, and within seconds, a series of EMP charges detonated, disabling the outer defenses. They slipped inside, moving like shadows. The final confrontation. The interior of the command center was cold, sterile, a stark contrast to the violent beauty of the jungle outside. Stack stood at the center, watching the chaos unfold through a large display screen. His back was to Ami's team when they entered. He didn't flinch when he saw them. Instead, he turned slowly, a smirk playing across his reptilian face. So, the humans have come to die? Ami stepped forward, her rifle ready, her gaze unwavering. You underestimated us, Stack. And now you're going to pay. Stack laughed, his voice low and menacing. Pay? I've already won. You're nothing more than pests. And pests are exterminated. Before Stack could react, Ami launched herself at him, her team falling into formation. Plasma fire filled the air as the galactic leader ducked behind a console, using his advanced shielding to absorb the incoming fire. Ami and her team moved with brutal efficiency, using the environment to their advantage, just as they had done in the jungle. Stack's frustration was evident. He had the firepower, the technology, but in this moment, it meant nothing. Ami was faster, smarter. With each move, she closed the gap. She could feel the victory within her grasp. With one final push, Ami leaped, driving her blade into Stack's chest. The alien commander gasped, his body convulsing as he fell to the ground. The command center went silent, the hum of machinery replaced by the eerie stillness of the moment. Ami stood over Stack, her chest heaving. This is Earth. And you never should have come. Earth's triumph. With Stack's death, the Galactic Armies began to fall apart. Without leadership, their forces scattered, disorganized and leaderless. The remaining soldiers surrendered or fled, and the invasion collapsed. Ami and her team didn't celebrate. There was no time for that. The cost of the battle was written in the lives lost, and the scars on the jungle itself. But as the remaining galactic forces withdrew, Earth had proven its resilience. "We've done it," Chin said, his voice a mix of relief and exhaustion. Ami nodded, looking out over the battlefield. "This is just the beginning." Humanity had fought for its place in the stars, and they had made it clear that no one, no matter how powerful, would ever take Earth without paying the price. The jungle had won. And Earth had won with it.